Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of the Articulate Fly, and we're back with another Southwest Virginia fishing report with Matt Reilly. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing great, Marvin. How are you?
As always, just trying to stay out of trouble, and I imagine given how favorable the conditions have been recently, you're a pretty tired fishing guide.
Yeah, pretty tired. It's been just about every day for the last, really since March. And this is probably the first, April, May, spring time frame that our smallmouth rivers haven't been high and dirty and blown out in the last, decade for the most part. So it's been good. Fishing's good across the board, and it's supposed to stay that way, I bet.
Yeah, and I've watching you on social media, you're already seeing, evidence of successful smallmouth spawn.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say the bulk of the spawning activity went off around mid-April down here, and we have had good stream flows dropping with some, maintenance rains that have kind of bumped it up a little bit, but nothing significant. I saw, you might have seen that video I posted the other day of a big mass of black fry on a smallmouth nest. That was last Sunday, and I did that same float yesterday, and they were free swimming and in a big fry ball, a little ways away from that same nest, and male still hanging out, kind of guarding loosely, but it's looking very successful. And knock on wood, the next 10 days we're not supposed to. I think total we have about a third of an inch of rain forecasted. So things are looking up. Just keep your fingers crossed.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, how long does it take? We've talked about this before that all the smallies don't spawn at the same time, but I also know that kind of post spawn, they're usually not as hungry and aggressive as they, were pre spawn. How long does it take for the bite to kind of normalize again?
Yeah, it's definitely, it's been kind of funky the last couple of days, probably the last week. And a lot of that, you're right. They don't all spawn at the same time. In fact, we had a small wave of some of the bigger sort of upper echelon fish go off earlier in April, before the full moon, about a week and a half before the full moon, when we had water temps up above 60 for a couple of days. And then we had, the large majority of them go off in the middle of the month. And more than just the waves of spawning activity, you also have, just the fact that females move into a nest, lay their eggs are fertilized, and then, they hang out for maybe a day, and then they roll out, and they position themselves a little more, sort of nebulously out in the middle of the river, on current seams and that kind of thing. And they're sort of sulking a little bit. They're recovering from, having dropped all their egg mass. And then you have the males that are still sitting tight to the nest and guarding them. So a portion of the population, namely the bigger females, can be sort of absent for a little while. There's a few places you can kind of look for them, but I would imagine, like I said, we've got the fry are free swimming right now. I would say, and certainly in the next week or two, a lot of those males will start to abandon posts and kind of enter into their post spawn period. And then I would say, certainly a week and a half, 2 weeks from now, things will start to normalize a little bit. But right now, I would say, fish are definitely being kind of moody and sort of uninspired in terms of chasing flies, but you just know where to look for them and fish a little bit slower, and try to be intentional about where you're fishing, adjacent spawning habitat. And that's kind of what we've been doing day to day.
Got it. So are you fishing like on the bottom with like critter mites and, clawdads and things like that? Or are you fishing a little bit up in the water column with streamers?
Definitely up in the water column. And we have, like I said, we don't have crazy high flows right now. So you don't necessarily need a heavy fly to get down very deep, very far. So your neutrally buoyant bait fish flies, CK bait fish, game changers, birds, minnows, and then critter mites are a good option too. Certainly, if you can't get anything to chase, dropping it down in the water column a little bit wouldn't be a bad idea. But yeah, I mean, we haven't had to do too much dredging, so that's always a plus.
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly where you fish, because it's so ledgy.
Yeah. No, it's one of the day to day. One of the lessons I try to teach all my clients, because it's one that you can always teach, is how to get out of trees and snags and stuff like that. It does make you a better and more successful angler, because the less time you can spend snagged up and stuck in the trees, the more fish you'll catch and the more fun you'll have. So not having to dig your dumbbell-eyed fly out of ledges and logs on the bottom all day is definitely a plus.
Yeah, plus with those big predator hooks, those tips get wrecked pretty easily on those rock ledges.
Yeah, yes, sir.
So I got a question from Matt McGraw, and Matt sent us plenty of questions before, and this is kind of a Brood-X question, I think, because he's looking for your favorite cicada pattern, and he's looking for, durability and ease of tie.
Yeah, so I really only entertain 3 different patterns. One of them is not super easy to tie. Tying is not really the word I'd use for either. It's more of a craft project. Is the Chuck Craft topwater bugs made out of cork and ultra suede and nail polish and epoxy. Those are definitely number one for durability. Number one for sort of customization too, because you can paint whatever you want on the underside of them to match anything from a dragonfly to a Brood-X cicada. So that's a good option if you're interested in sanding cork and painting. But not the easiest. You're not going to crank out a dozen of them in an hour. It's going to be a day or 2 or 3.
Or 4 or 5.
Or 4 or 5, depending on how often you do it. And then the other one that I tie is Blaine Chocolate Cicada, which is tied almost entirely out of different foam products. And that's an easy tie. But they're durable as well. But they, as we were talking about earlier, those products are going to get slightly difficult to find. Like I've got some I'm trying to tie up for a couple of clients of mine right now, and a lot of those products are back ordered right now just because it's a popular pattern and a lot of people are tying them. And then the other one, it's not one that I tie, so it doesn't help a ton, but I always buy a bunch of the Reilly cicadas, which you can get from a bunch of different fly shops. I know my buddy William Kiersniak of Eastern Trophies up in Alexandria has got a bunch of them on his website. That's a good pattern. Not terribly expensive, and I always buy a bunch of them just to shove in my box in case I bust off all my other ones, or like I said, it's not a bad pattern either. They fish really well, and any fly that I can buy in bulk that's a good pattern that's pretty cheap. I always like to have on hand in case I just don't have time to tie a bunch and I need them to fish. So those are my top 3. But there's a bunch of other patterns out there that are relatively easy to tie. I stick to those 3 primarily.
Got it. And I want to say that I've seen on William's site as well that he will actually sell some of those hard-bodied chuck flies that you mentioned.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So
Absolutely.
that's a place to buy them. And I don't know, I was going to ask you too, you know, does William by any chance sell the bodies, right? Because that's kind of the pain in the behind part of making that pattern.
It is, yeah, and he does have some pre-shaped cork that you can buy, you know, where you can just basically cut a slot, stick the hook in, and then paint it yourself, which isn't a bad way to go. Like I said, those are definitely number one for durability, because it's literally cork and epoxy. So unless you just, you know, beat the snot out of them on rocks or bridge pilings, you know, they're going to hold up pretty well. And they splat really well, and they, you know, they've got a good profile. They're not going to fall apart. You know, that's definitely my number one choice.
Absolutely. And, you know, folks, we love questions on the articulate fly. You can email them to us or send them to us on our Facebook, our Instagram page. And if we use your question, I'll send you some articulate fly swag, and we'll enter you into a drawing for something cool from Matt at the end of the season. And Matt, before I let you hop, why don't you let folks know, you know, where they can find you on the internet so they can book you and fish with you. I know you're basically a late summer, early fall open date guy now, but, you know, always better to be prepared and get on the calendar sooner rather than later.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah, right now I got a couple days left in August, but we're really looking at September and October at this point. But you know, should be plenty of great fishing through October, you know, especially if we have warm weather through the fall like we did last year. But my website is mattreillyflyfishing.com, and you can find my phone number or email. I've got a contact form on there too. You know, however you feel best reaching out. I'd love to hear from you, and look forward to getting on the water.
Yeah, well, there you have it, folks. You know, it's a great time of the year to be out fishing in Virginia, whether you're chasing smallmouth or chasing trout or chasing panfish and bass. Get out there and catch a few, everybody. Tight lines, everybody. Tight lines, Matt.
All right. Thanks, Marvin.